Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel, Black Mental Health, a Systemic Approach. Again, I'm Tiana Smith. If this is your first time joining, we have been talking about trauma, what that looks like. We've gone into a little bit about myself, how my time was in the foster system, not necessarily in detail, but the fact that I was in the foster system, what led me to create this channel today. So today I'm going to talk about my time in foster care in depth, a little bit more in depth. I feel like I owe it to you guys to explain to you what my time looked like, how I advocated for myself in many different ways, how you can advocate for yourself in some of the same ways, and probably a little bit more ways these days, because there have been a lot of changes to policies surrounding coming out of the foster care system and the assistance that you receive while you're in the foster care system. So there are a few differences from the time that I was in there to now. They've changed a lot of laws and policies governing foster youth. So going into my placements, when I first went into foster care, my very first placement was in Watts, California, Los Angeles, California. I went there. There were 2 or 3 other girls there, and when I got there, I immediately, made friends with these girls. We're all in the same situation. We have different reasons for being here, but we're here, right? So we used to go on outings. The lady used to take us on outings. We used to get money every month. I believe it was like $50 a month, and that would be like our clothing allowance. It was called a clothing allowance. She would take us to Ross. She took us to the movies. She would just try to make our experience with her as normal as possible. She didn't want us to feel as if we were in a foster home, aside from the fact that we couldn't go in her kitchen, and aside from the fact that we actually were. The hardest thing about being in placements was that you would make a friend, and if that friend's social worker found them a placement based on their circumstances, they could be gone tomorrow, they could be gone in the same day that you met them, they could just be gone. And that sort of becomes your reality. You meet people, you become close to people, and then they're gone. In my time in foster care, I had about 8 or 9 placements, give or take, maybe more, maybe 10, 11, 12, I'm not sure. So the number of placements that you have ultimately depends on you and your social worker and the goal for your case. So if reunification is the goal for your case, you probably won't have too many placements, but you may have moved enough for the sake of your case, whatever the judge has ordered, wherever your biological parents may be living, wherever your new caregivers be living. There's a lot of things that take factor into that. Your age, the policies of that placement, what you do when you get there, how you get along with the other people when you get there. Is it co-ed or not co-ed? Do you have triggering situations at these placements? The cities that you're bound to live in when you're in foster care and when you have to bounce around from placement to placement, they vary. I lived in Hermosa Beach. I've lived in Los Angeles. I've lived in Lancaster, California. I've lived in Palmdale, California, excuse me. I've lived in Manhattan Beach. So many different places where you wouldn't even think there are placements. You're thinking in your mind that you're a bad kid, or for whatever reason you're in this predicament. No one wants you. So what you're looking at is it has to be this dark, gloomy house, or you probably pictured it as this institution. And no, oftentimes a foster home is the house next door. Advocacy played a big part in my movement through foster care. When you're in foster care, you will find yourself advocating for yourself and for your rights like no other. You might have a social worker or an attorney who will do the same, but no one will do it like you. When I was in foster care, I had to advocate for my right to go to school. I had to advocate for my right to graduate. I had to advocate for my right to be normal. I remember being in a placement called Florence Crenington, and they had school there. They brought teachers in. You got to work on plays. You got to showcase your ability to be successful, and that helped in so many ways because it didn't feel like we were being left out because we were in group homes. Whereas some group homes, if you were there on a 30-day hold, you might not be able to go to school. And they do have group homes where you're on a 30-day hold where your social worker is trying to find the best fit for you. And so those are places where that's 30 days, you're not going to school because you're waiting on a placement. So I found myself advocating to go to school, to finish school, to where I said in a previous segment, I shared with you guys that I had to go to school from 3 to 9 o'clock at night trying to make up credits in my last semester of high school. This is how serious it became, and how I knew that I needed to advocate for the ability to be like my peers is because I told you guys in a previous segment, my grandmother had always wanted me to go to school and be better than my biological mom. And when she would say that, she would say, go to college. So I always had this drive, and in the back of my mind, her telling me that I needed to go to school. Court was one of those things where it was fun, but it wasn't, right? We all want to know what's going to happen. Are we going to go home? Are we going to get to go to this placement that we might have advocated that we wanted to go to because we heard our friend was over there, or our cousin is over there, our sister, brother might be in this placement. And so you get to court and your attorney is telling you that your parent has to do X, Y, and Z in order to get you back, or your parent doesn't necessarily want you back, and you have now become a ward of the court, meaning that the court is now your legal guardian. You go to court to, let your attorney know what's going on in the group homes, whether you're being mistreated, whether the staff are, treating you right, treating you inappropriately. This is a time where, again, you advocate for yourself. You state your needs and your wants. You might go to court and find out that, this was just a wellness check and you're going back to the same placement. Oftentimes when you go to court, you're given back to your legal guardian. You get to go home. Sometimes that's not the case. So court can go a lot of different ways. Most times when I was in foster care, I used to love going to court. This was an opportunity to take a ride. This was an opportunity to see my family members. This was an opportunity to see other people, again, take a drive. Because when you're on the court van, you've got to go pick up everybody else that has to go to court for that day on that van. So if you got picked up in Lancaster, you might have to go all the way to LA first before you come back to court in Lancaster. So there's just this scenic drive and this sense of freedom that you have while you are going to pick up your peers. And the goal is always reunification. For DCFS, for the Department of Mental Health, the goal is always reunification through a process, though. Your parent has either got to take some parenting classes, receive therapy through mental health or its contracted agencies, go through what a team of professionals have deemed that your parent or even you as the child need to go through in order for this reunification process to happen. And if that is not done in a timely manner, you as this child in placement can get to a point where you are eligible for adoption. And it's scary. It becomes a mental battle of, am I good enough, and what am I not doing, and is my mom going to try hard enough, and is the people who are supposed to want me going to try hard enough to to make this reunification process happen. Having said all that, you're in placement, you're going to court every so often, you might be moved from city to city. School, what happens to school? School becomes a major issue. Like I said, you have to advocate for your right to go to school. At least I did. I had to say, I need to be in school. I told my grandmother I was going to go to college. I told my grandmother I was going to finish school. I have to be in school. And school was where a lot of my social life came from. So had I not been in school and only been confined to these placements, part of my social life would have been just null and void. I wouldn't have that piece of me. I'm not the biggest social butterfly as it stands, but not having that part of it would have just completely taken away from who I could have become and who I have become. So going to school, you've got to find a placement. Your social worker's got to find a placement, and she's got to be diligent about finding a placement where you're able to go to school, where they can say, yes, she can get on a bus and go to school, or yes, we have transportation provided for these girls to go to school, and yes, we allow them to go to school. Because not all of them at that time allowed you to go to school. And I remember going to this one placement it was called the Kingsley House in LA. It's off of Washington and Kingsley. And I remember being able to go to school. My social worker said, yes, she can go to school. Can she catch the bus? Yes. These are all permissions that have to be granted, because if something happens to you as this ward of this court, the government, the state is responsible. So can she go to school? Yes. Can she take the bus? Yes. And this was my first time in a long time feeling like I had a sense of freedom. So I'm taking the bus now. I'm going to school. I'm normal. My friends know I'm in foster care. They know I'm in a group home. They don't really care too much. They make their jokes here and there, but it doesn't make me or break me. It is what it is, right? So, I graduate like everybody else. DCFS said, if you show us your needs, an itemized list of your needs, we'll help you pay for your graduation and things like that, your prom dress, and that's exactly what they did. My grandmother helped me with some of my expenses. And so support is everything in this type of situation. Being in foster care, you need support, whether it come from your peers in foster care, whether it come from your staff in your agency, the staff in your group home. You need support, and that took me a long way. So school was something that I was able to accomplish, and once I got a dose of grants and things like that for foster care, for foster children and former foster children, once I graduated high school, it was kind of like my only way out. And I believe I've shared that in a previous segment too. Emancipation is the biggest success of foster care. Emancipation says that not only do you have the ability to be independent, but that you are. And you go through a checklist. When I was getting ready to emancipate, my social worker came out. She said, do you think she can do this on her own? They said yes. I was always the one. They're like, Tiana can do it. She can do it. She might be a little hard-headed. She might need a little guidance and some structure, but she can do it. And so when it came down to, can she cook for herself? Can she grocery shop? Do you think she'll go to school? Everyone said yes. Everyone that I needed to say yes said yes. And of course I needed some refinement around some areas, but that was a few classes and some time at the Breezy Foundation. I don't know if the Breezy Foundation is still open in Los Angeles, but Breezy Foundation, shout out, because we used to go there. We learned skills, computer skills, typing skills, life skills, and it helped. It really did. Shout out Breezy Foundation. Going back to being emancipated, I went before a judge, and this judge asked me a series of questions and basically made a decision on my life. And from that point on, I was on my own. I utilized the resources that were out there for emancipated foster youth, which were grocery cards, and there is a career with the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services called the Career Development Intern. And at that time, as long as you were a former foster or probation youth, which I was actually both, you could get this job. And once I got this job, it was beautiful. So there were things out there to give you a step up. I still didn't feel like it was enough. I didn't feel like I was really seen as this former foster youth, because there were a lot of challenges that I had. There were a lot of questions that I needed to be answered about life. Here I am, 18 years old, 17, 18 years old, and I don't really know how to maneuver life like that. I don't know how to write checks. I don't know how to balance a checkbook. I don't know how to go for an interview, create a resume. These are all things that I had to figure out on my own. And I think I did a pretty good job of figuring it out. Sometimes I find myself mad at myself because I'd look at other people and say, well, how is she so far along? And, must be a condition of having your mom and your dad. So, but it never stopped me. It never did. And so emancipating from the foster care system was the biggest success, because you're free. If you choose to keep ties with any of those people while you're there, that's fine. But at that point, you are free. And then life happens. You've got to get a good job. You've got to know how to budget. You've got to know how to cook, clean. You've got to know what you need to survive. And that can come with a lot of downfalls. It very much so can. Not knowing how to govern a household, not knowing how to make sure that you have your rent in line every month, so where you're not getting evictions, making sure that you're placing yourself around the right people so that you have the support that you need to make sure that you are able to survive and live. And when you don't have that, you will fall. And I fell a few times trying to figure out life. I fell a couple of times. I had to figure it out. Like I used to sit in my classrooms, I used to tell everybody I sold everything but ass. I used to say that, and my professors found it. Some of my professors who I felt comfortable in sharing that with found it to be very valuable, because in their experience in the hood and things like that, these are things that you have to do. These are struggles that you have to overcome. Sleeping on people's couches, selling dope, selling weed, selling drugs to make it. Putting yourself in compromising situations that you otherwise wouldn't have put yourself in order to survive. We're talking about survival here. I mean, I used to walk into the Food for Less on Venice and it's not too far from Venice and Pico. I can't remember what street that is, but if you're from LA, you know what Food for Less I'm talking about. And it's on, it's a Food for Less on Venice, and, or was it on Washington? I can't remember. It was close to Washington, but I used to go in there and steal all the time. Food. There was a Ralph's in the Mid-Wilshire area. I used to go over there and steal. Me and my friend would go over there. I had to eat. I had to live. And by the grace of God, I was never caught. Never caught. My intentions were pure. I just wanted to eat. When I would get county money, or when I would get ready to go get on the county, back then at this time, you had to have a reason to not go work. And I'm still talking about life, because this is life after foster care. My intentions were pure. Going into these stores, all I wanted to do was live. I would get my county check, and I would walk into these county buildings. This is what I was getting ready to say. You used to have a reason to not work, right? And I had asthma, and at this time, I didn't really want to work. I'm in these streets. I don't mind going to somebody's job, but I don't mind you giving me this $350 $45 every month or whatever it was at the time, and I didn't have to do anything. So I would get on the computer and doctor up my own doctor's notes. Don't ask me how, and I'm not telling anybody to do this. I'm simply sharing what I went through as a means for me to survive at the time that I needed it. I did some things that I had to do to live. Then once I started having my children, I started using those resources, CCRC Crystal Stairs, putting it in my friend's name so she can get money, hoping that occasionally she would watch my kids until I got to the point where it's like, no, I can't even do this anymore. I need my kids to go to an actual daycare where they can for real be watched. You know, they're getting their meals, they're learning. Life happens, and nobody can tell you that the resources or the tools that you need to get through what you need to get through is not right. Survival is a mode. Survival is a pattern, like what we talked about in the trauma segment. This is a pattern that you use to survive. And once I realized that I had not necessarily a system, but a modality of survival, I used it. I figured it out and I used it. And I encourage you to tap within whatever has worked for you in the past. And either you continue to use it or go back to that and see where that can take you. See where that can take you. You don't necessarily have to have gone through the foster system to have so many life experiences to say, I need to go through all that to get there. No, 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 no. You can use tools and ways of coping and patterns that have once served you in a positive manner to get you to the end of the tunnel. And I say that with love, I say that with dignity, and I say that with the utmost integrity, that I want every single one of my African American Black brothers and sisters who feel at this very moment that you can't make it, that it's very possible. It's very possible. So you're going to go through your ups and downs. You're going to have to leave some people behind. You're going to meet some people today. You're not going to know them tomorrow, but you'll understand why they were in your life, even for that short amount of time. God has his way of doing things, and I encourage you to create a relationship with him that will allow you to understand what he's doing, when he's doing it, and why he's doing it. And that is my segment for today, you guys. I thank you so much for joining Black Mental Health, a Systemic Approach. I am Tiana Smith. Tune in next time for our next segment. I can't say what it is going to be right now, but thank you guys so much for tuning in up to this point. Again, take care, love yourself, and see you next time.